Hello everybody, today I would like to talk to you about the first chapter of this book, Integrating Math and Science in Early Childhood Classroom Through Big Ideas, a Constructivist Approach. As I was reading it, a couple of things caught my attention and I would like to share my opinions about these things. One of them was what is Constructivism? So it's usually a misunderstood concept in my mind, because sometimes when we talk about constructivism, people think that it's like, well, the child is at the center of the learning and teacher does nothing, but it's really not the case, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. But the constructivism, there are two main ideas that's behind constructivism. One is children have their own ideas or theories about the world, meaning that they're not just some empty vessel that people are dumping these ideas or thoughts in them. That's not how constructivism sees children. So children have their own ideas and theories about the world around them. The second one, they are constantly and actively applying these theories, ideas, and testing these and forming their understanding of the world. It's a ever-ending job. It's like you keep developing your theory, your idea about how the world works. So you keep working on it, and they are not passive recipient. They are actively involved in this. So as you can see, this is quite different than the behaviorist philosophy, because in the book it also talks about how the constructivism perceive children as having wired, innate desire to explore things. But in behaviorism, it's pretty much children are seen as they are bounded by the stimuli around them. So the stimuli determines the behavior. But as you can see, most of our behaviors are not really determined by the stimuli around us. We do things that has nothing to do with our surrounding. So it doesn't mean that our environment or our surroundings are meaningless or irrelevant. No, not at all. As we see it in the Reggio Emilia, the environment is actually significant, very significant. And Reggio Emilia approach the environment is seen as the third teacher. You might say, what is the first and second? Why third teacher? So the first one is the parent. The second one is the teacher in the classroom, and the third one is the environment. So as a teacher, if you create an environment that promotes children discoveries, learning, then it becomes like a teacher itself. And it's a very implicit teacher, because it's not using a voice or lecture to teach the child. And like nature, right? We learn from nature. It doesn't dictate us anything. It doesn't tell us anything, but it's a teacher. But so in order for us to learn from our environment, yes, we need to prepare a good environment, an intentional environment that will support children's development. But also, you can also work on observation, like your own observation and sharpening children's observation. If you work on those things, I think the learning from the environment can be maximized, so they can learn at the maximum level. Because you can put two individuals in the same environment, but if they're not carefully observing what's around them, one might learn more than the other one. So observation is a very important thing, especially in Maria Montessori's philosophy. If you read her books, you will see how she emphasizes the importance of observation, observing carefully, almost like studying your environment to learn from it. But yes, environment is important, but it doesn't mean that environment determines our learning. So there is a big difference there. Another thing that caught my attention in the celebrating the diversity of children, it's, diversity, we hear it a lot and we kind of become like numb to this idea of diversity, and we think that we value it, but oftentimes I see practices in school settings that makes me question, like, do we really value diversity? Like, one of the ways I see diversity is like children in math and science, they have each child has a unique way of solving problems. So do we appreciate these different ways of solving math and scientific questions or problems? Or are we bothered by it because it's not the way we taught them? If I put a microphone to many people, I say, if a child solves a problem different than the way you taught them, would you be upset or happy? Probably 99% of the people will say, yeah, I'll be happy because it's different. But in practice, I see quite a different picture. So if a child solves a math problem differently without violating any mathematical rules, it should be celebrated. But my own experience tells me different stories about me as a young boy solving math problem differently, and I was not encouraged by my teachers. I was just scolded by my teachers, some of them, not all. And also my son had an experience that is very similar to that. So like, for example, in Turkey we solve math problem different than how it is solved here. Not all of them, but there are some differences. And I learned math quite differently than my American students. So when my son solves a problem that is more like a European way of solving the problem, sometimes it raises questions like, that's not how I taught you. But as long as you are not violating any mathematical rules and you're getting the correct answer, we should really celebrate it. Even if the child is not getting the correct answer, we should still encourage them and work with them to find out the right answer if there is one right answer. Sometimes there might be more than one, right? And the first chapter also talks about a very important issue, the false dichotomy, teacher-centered versus or teacher-directed versus child-centered curriculum. It is really a false dichotomy, because why? In any constructive classroom, if you go to any constructive classroom, you won't see a teacher doing nothing and the child is just doing whatever they want. No, teacher's role is actually very significant here, and the author make a good correction. Instead of saying teacher directed, it's better to say teacher provoked. Why? Because teachers provoke children's learning by suggesting, facilitating, responding to children's explorations and experimentations. So the teacher's role seems like little, but it's really not. Like facilitating the child's learning, exploration, suggesting ideas that will promote discovery. These are not some random things that you can easily do. You have to spend some time, and it's a very significant thing in learning. Another thing that caught my attention, we always say that the school curriculum should relate to life, but oftentimes there's another thing that we forget. Like, we present math and science inquiries to students, but we sometimes forget to link them to real life examples. When we link them to real life examples, it becomes more meaningful. So that when the child solves the problem, they feel like, oh yes, now I can use this in this context, etc. And also another term that I saw, and I don't know how to pronounce this, it's going to be challenging as my Italian is very rusty. So it's a formal negotiation. A teacher and children negotiate to determine the curriculum. What a beautiful idea, right? So you don't just go into a classroom and say, children, I'm going to do this, get ready. No, you have dialogue with children, and then based on that dialogue, you create a curriculum And because children have some input in this curriculum, they're more likely to be more interested in it. So that's why I would like my students, undergraduates, graduates, if they have an idea about the way I teach my courses, and they say, you know, can we do this instead of that, or can we do this on top of what we are doing? I would love to hear your ideas. And then, so if they make sense and it's applicable, I'll be happy to make the arrangements. Like recently, one student said, you know, she didn't say why do we have to put the comment in one day, but she raised some concerns in that I feel uneasy about posting a comment on one day, or we should have a larger window time frame for posting a comment. And I thought about it. My purpose was to prevent people from posting their initial comments and then the replies in like half an hour and then never visiting the discussion board. And so I did 2 different due dates, one for the initial post, the one for the replies. But after hearing my student's concern, I think she has a point. So I expanded the replies to 2 days. So if you have any suggestions, and you read the syllabus and you know a little bit about the assignments, and if there's anything that you want me to cover that you don't see it on the course schedule, or just any comments, questions, please do let me know and I will seriously consider them. Thank you very much for watching and hope to see you soon.